Good evening. I am Commissioner Griffin, Chair of the Policy Committee for the Rochester Board of Education. It is now 6:20 p.m. on Tuesday, April 9th, 2024. This is the Policy Committee for the whole meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the Policy Cal meeting agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. A motion by Commissioner Malloy and second by President Elliott. Any discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Commissioner. This is just a quick reminder for Commissioner Patterson that you have to be on video to vote. So if your intent is to vote, you have to pop on for a second. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have no speakers. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the February 6, 2024 policy?
Moved.
And I have a motion by President Elliott, second by Commissioner Malloy. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, there's no NISBA policy recommendations at this time. If I can have Commissioners join with me in the front of the dais to recognize and thank our 2023 to 2024 Code of Conduct Committee members who are present this evening. Doesn't look like we have too many of them here. Let me see if are these the ones that are here?
Yeah, do we need to go down there and? Yeah, let's go down there and recognize them. All of us go down.
One moment, please. It's just handed to me, right? Yes. Thank you very much. Ashoni Phillips? Ashani, I'm sorry, honey. And Brianna Jones. Yes, wait first. Come on. Here you go, baby. Thank you. And yeah, give it to her. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. LaCasa D. Felton. And the last one is Robert Allen. Give him a hand. Thank you, guys. We're just gonna take a quick. We're gonna take a picture or no? Are we all set? Okay. We got one more. Okay, hold on one sec. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, just have to come so that way we don't.
Come on. Okay. Okay, so I just want to thank you guys again for all that you do. We're just going to take a quick picture. I'm going to put the mic down. She's going to get your certificate as well. Thank you, guys.
So before we do that, I just wanted to really, along with our other colleagues, just to really thank you all, because this is difficult work that you're doing, that code of conduct, and I think it's one of the best that's in the nation, and you all did that. It was community. This is one of those groups where it works in the district. We've got people from different parts of our community doing this, and you came up with this product, and so, and it's, you know, highly recognized, and just wanted to thank you all very much on behalf of the entire board. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President Elliott. Okay, at this time, I will turn it over to Charisma to do, actually, we just did the code of conduct presentation, right? Oh, I'm sorry, no, this is our policy of code of conduct, 1400, and Charisma, I'm gonna introduce Charisma to do that portion of, the meeting today.
Shoot, did I just?
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioner Griffin. I'll actually have our General Counsel, Neil, start us off.
Thank you very much, Charisma. Is the presentation up? I went to a lot of those meetings. I didn't see my certificate, but that's okay.
There you go. That's right. That's right. That's right. We want our general counsel to have a certificate. Absolutely.
Before I get started, but really heartfelt thanks to, all the people who participated. It was a lot of work. I went to many of those meetings, and they were involved and committed and cared about the students and offered a lot of great insight and input. So good evening, commissioners, superintendent, colleagues, and school community. My name is Adrian Neal. I'm the general counsel for the Rochester City School District. In conjunction with Charisma Travis, our senior research analyst for the board, we're going to present a very brief overview about the district code of conduct. This is primarily to lay the groundwork for board discussions about potential revisions to the code. So what is a code of conduct? Education law requires that all school districts adopt and enforce a code of conduct for the maintenance of order on school property and at school functions. The code governs the conduct of students, teachers, other school staff, and visitors. The law calls for the code to be developed in collaboration with students, teachers, administrators, and parents, and school safety and other school personnel. And any revisions to the code also require similar collaboration. Next slide, please. Unless the code of conduct applies, again, to all students, district personnel, parents, visitors, and persons on school property or those attending any school-sponsored activities. And the code also applies in some instances to activities off school grounds or outside regular school hours if it has the potential to result in a disruption to the educational process or endanger the health, safety, or welfare of those in the school community. Next slide, please. The code of conduct at its essence is really about the setting of clear expectations for behavior, the consequences for violations, and a shared accountability among all school district shareholders for those expectations. Some examples of what the Code of Conduct address are a student bill of rights and responsibility that focuses on positive student behavior and a safe and supportive school climate, provisions prohibiting harassment, bullying, and/or discrimination by staff or students, issues such as dress and what language is appropriate and acceptable, procedures for reporting and determining violations of the code, provisions for the discipline and removal of students or other persons who violate the code, and instances where law enforcement may involve, and so forth. At the nexus of the RCSD Code of Conduct is a belief in progressive discipline and restorative approaches. Progressive discipline aims at creating recurring learning opportunities around behavioral, moral, and ethical issues. The goal of the code is really to prevent recurring negative behaviors by helping students learn from their mistakes. So in plain language, we start with the least punitive of options and progress from there as necessary. Simultaneously, the resolutions should include restorative approaches that seek to find out what happened, who was harmed by the behavior, and what needs to be done to make things right or repair the harm. and how students, staff, and so forth can behave differently in the future. Examples of restorative practice include facilitated circles and peer mediation. One of the most significant elements of the Code of Conduct is the behavioral matrix that lays out in a very clear format the variety of interventions and consequences that school staff may use in response to behaviors. The pages for the current matrix are referenced on this slide. Again, in my opinion, the work that the Code of Conduct Committee has done on the matrix, on this element of the code, while it may seem bureaucratic, is extremely vital and amongst the most important of the revisions and review to the code on a yearly basis. The Rochester City School District's new Code of Conduct was adopted in June 16, 2016, last amended June of 2023. The law calls for the code to be developed in collaboration with the entire school community and stakeholders, and any revisions to the code require similar collaboration. Also included in the regulatory requirement is that requirement for a yearly review and updates if necessary, which again is a part of why it's on the agenda this evening. And with that, I will pass it on to Ms. Karishma Travis to discuss the review process to date.
Thanks, Adrienne. So, good evening again. So per resolution number 222313, the individuals and groups named below had the opportunity to recommend members to the Code of Conduct Committee. So it ranges from the commissioners of the board to the superintendents, our parent groups, certain unions as well as our Student Leadership Congress group. The Code of Conduct Committee was co-chaired by RCSD students Ja'Cory Chapman and Ashani Phillips. All members on this list attended at least one meeting. So the list you currently see in front of you is the list I'm referring to. Based on the previous slide, some groups may not be represented on this list because either the group declined recommending members or the members recommended did not attend any meetings. I would like to give a huge shout out and thank you to the committee for all their commitment and hard work during this process. And again, second what Adrienne has said about the group and the hard work they put into it. So unlike the board's normal policy review process, the Code of Conduct followed a different process. Between October 2023 and February 2024, the Code of Conduct Committee met bi-weekly, either in person or virtually, to review and make recommendations to the policy. Once the committee finished its review, Executive Cabinet reviewed and decided to accept all recommendations. The policy then had a public hearing that was held on March 19th. Final recommendations were forwarded to the policy committee to follow the policy management process as outlined in policy 2410. So before I go over this next slide, just as a disclaimer, due to the length of the policy, it is recommended that the current Code of Conduct policy that the district is implementing be compared to the track change clean copy version that's being recommended tonight. The highlighted yellow in all documents attached to the board docs tonight are the recommendations for the board to consider. There's also a 5-page document attached to this agenda item that lists a more in-depth overview of the recommended changes beyond what I am about to share. So recommended changes include aligning the matrix with the school reconfiguration plan by updating some inappropriate behaviors to include K-6 versus 7 through 12. 2 sections added after the matrix focusing on re-engaging students They are called continued engagement throughout suspension. And then a second one is called reentry to school after suspension. Creation of a superintendent's regulation for re-engagement after a student's suspension. Appendix A, dress code, updated to be more inclusive and sensitive to our students' needs. Appendix C, due process, updated to include process for students entering our district who are suspended or expelled from their previous school district. Added required policy as Appendix F, school safety and educational climate, SSEC reporting, which meant that the glossary is now being considered as Appendix G. Updated definitions for district personnel versus school personnel. Define employee. Change police or police officer to law enforcement or law enforcement officials throughout the policy for consistency. Change per to in accordance throughout the policy for consistency, and also change personnel to staff as well to be consistent with the language. And then finally, exhibits 1400E1 and 1400E2 is being recommended. So 1400E1, the committee felt that the policy is a large policy. As of right now, I believe it's 70 pages, and with the new recommendations, it's gonna be about 75. And so E1 is a mini version of it where the committee had pulled out the most important sections for parents and students to be able to review, so it would make it about 24, 25 pages. And then 1400E2, the committee felt that the due process section is also very important for families to know about, even though it's in the policy. They had also recommended it to become an exhibit. And so what would happen is that if the board accepts, these changes, the 1400E1, the MIDI Code of Conduct, would have 2 QR codes listed on there as well as websites. And what happens is that the first QR code will allow a parent to go to the full policy itself. The second QR code will allow a parent to go to the due process section itself. So it just makes it easier for our families to follow through with the policy. So next steps. The next steps would be the policy is forwarded out the policy committee. It will be forwarded to the board business meeting for April. It will follow the policy adoption process outlined in policy 2410 with the hope of it being voted on at the June business meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Charisma. Can I get a motion for the Code of Conduct 1400 and the mini Code of Conduct of 1400-E1 out of the Policy Committee?
Oh, second.
Motion.
Thank you. Motion by President Elliott and Commissioner Malloy. Any discussions? All in favor? Oh, hold on one second. Commissioner Santiago?
I do have a question. I have a couple questions. So I'm looking at the review, and in the section about student removal and due process, where it says disciplinary practices include an in or out of school suspension, is that just specifically to suspensions, or are we saying any disciplinary practice are those two? Like what was the plan or the intent with this?
Excuse me, Commissioner Santiago, are you on slide 11?
So this is actually through,
Page 2 on the table.
yeah, it's page 2 on the Code of Conduct review table.
I just want to make sure everybody knows where you're at,
Where is that? I'm sorry, because I can't find it.
at the chart.
Yeah, right there.
If you look in the public content there's a Code of Conduct Policy 1400 Recommendations Overview, and that is where Commissioner Santiago is looking. And on page 2, it's really particular to student removals and due process. So disciplinary practices, including in-school or out-of-school suspensions or any other removal. So when we're talking about student removals, a student removal is inclusive of removing them from a class for a period of time, not just in school and out of school suspension. And that's bringing clarity to that because a removal from a program is a removal from a program. It must be documented as such.
So this is not saying that those are the only disciplinary practices. This is just specifically for removal.
Yep.
Okay, and then my next question is about the re-entry to after-school suspension, to after out-of-school suspension. And it says the superintendent will create a superintendent's regulation for re-engagement after a student is suspended. Is this for every student, or would this be so would it be the superintendent's job for every student to create a plan?
So what the committee is recommending is that the superintendent creates regulations for re-engagement of students when they come back from suspension. Right now, what we want to do is make sure that we have a process that's district-wide for when students return back from suspension.
And so you're saying that you would do that through your regulations?
So the superintendent would create regulations for that process, right?
Okay, and then when you create regulations, how is that implemented? Is it you create it and it's implemented, or does it come across to the board to review?
The board is giving me purview to create those regulations, to have a process for re-engagement.
Okay, and that's not a responsibility of the code of conduct. Is that what you guys are saying? Like, we don't have something in paper explaining what re-entry should be after out-of-school suspension?
There is re-entry that has to happen at suspension, right? For uniformity and process as a whole district, that's where the regulations come in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Santiago. Is there any more discussions that we need on this?
I do have some questions, but it's not necessarily,
pertaining to this.
well, it is. I want to know how, to the superintendent, how do we roll out the code of conduct policy is the question, so that everybody is aware of what is contained within the policy. Parent groups, students, teachers, how is it rolled out?
I thought that Charisma just explained, didn't you just explain it to?
Not the process of rolling it out.
So I do want to say prior to COVID, right, and prior to school closures, we did spend a lot of time with our principals and teams dissecting the code of conduct, reviewing the code of conduct, and that was pre-COVID. When we came back from COVID, I think we kind of lost our way from the code of conduct, and now we're making sure that implementation and professional development and training is around that, but I'll turn it over to Deputy Turner if I missed anything.
No, not much to add. Was just going to underscore the fact that we are, have been in the process of making sure that our administrators understand the code of conduct. We're getting to the teacher level. We do a lot with our students when we do the restorative training with our student leaderships, and are developing something that's parent-friendly, so that parents are aware, in a nutshell, what their rights are under the code of conduct. That is under development currently.
Thank you.
Commissioner Santiago, you have another question?
Are there any, so what are the steps taken if there's a principal or somebody that's in admin that's not following the code of conduct? Because it can look great, but if it's not being followed, that's where the issue lies. So do we have a process, and if a principal or somebody in the admin power violates the code of conduct?
So I think there's making sure that we're doing our due diligence on awareness of what the policy is. So a case in point, if a parent had reached out to me as a chief of school saying that there were, then I review to see if it's in line with the code of conduct. And if it isn't, then we'd expunge that potential violation. So I think it's an awareness to make sure that our families and parents and students all know how to advocate for themselves based on our code of conduct, as well as that. But, it's also then supporting the principals to make sure that they have the right tools if they're struggling with discipline, with a student in particular, what their approaches may be. But I think for us, it's a review process. There's appeals built into suspensions as well. So if there's a suspension, there's natural appeals built into that process.
So I want to ask David, who, is president of the SLC, how do you all have conversations around the code of conduct? And in the schools, do your representatives have an opportunity to discuss with students in the schools?
So two of our SLC members are the chairman or the chair people for the SLC committee. So they would have the best knowledge on that. But I do know that when the presentation was happened to recruit SLC members for the code of conduct, there was dialogue about that. Like, what does what do we want the code of conduct to look like? And that happened a lot in the meetings with those two chair people. So
Thank you.
To that point, David, how many people are in those meetings from the school outside of the SLC members? Are you is just inclusive of the SLC members when you're at the schools, or is it communicated in like a forum where there's students that are not specifically from SLC but are able to engage in the code of conduct conversations? Can you?
So are you talking about who's able to join the code of conduct meeting or?
No, I'm saying with I know you guys are SLC, correct? So if we have two members from every school, right? How is that information filtered from SLC? Let me be clear, SLC to the other students in the schools. Is there some type of literature that is given to these students that are representatives of the SLC so that you are filtering the code of conduct information to the students? Or into the parents or what have you. How is that filtered through?
So so we leverage SLC for their voice in terms of being on this committee, but we engage students throughout the process. I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Superintendent Turner,
Yeah.
just to kind of answer a little bit of how we engage other students like you're asking versus just SLC.
But I guess my concern is that if SLC is the head of the student population in our and that's what they do, I think it would be advantageous for them to also have a platform to be able to those two individuals from the schools filter it back into the schools because it's like their own little community SLC versus them giving the information back in to the other students that are not part of SLC. I think it's important that we keep them engaged as well. So if you have the SLC staff, I think they should also be going back to the schools that they are members of and say, hey, listen, this is what we did in SLC. I want to just give you guys that information. Yeah, I don't care to understand that other part of it because we already that engagement. Not that I don't care, but I'm really interested in the SLC filtering the information to other students specifically. I shouldn't say I apologize for saying I don't care because I do care. I just want to be specific to SLC only. I don't want to hear about the other part of it because that's what I think the SLC should be doing in reference to filtering that information back.
Yeah,
I
this
just
is in
want
reference
that's
to
my clarity.
SLC. So it's a student designed, student ran, student constructed. So they determine what they feel is their priorities, and they also determine what activities they're going to partake, what's going to be their focus. Our larger job is that every school, primarily in the beginning of the school year, informs parents and students in a very student level point away what the code of conduct entails, what their rights are under the code of conduct, and what the matrix looks like, and what possible consequences for violation of that is. So that becomes our responsibility on the school level to ensure that our parents and our students are aware of both of their rights and what is contained in the code of conduct.
Do we have anything that's out there now that the kids kind of like sign off on in understanding the code of conducts in the schools? Do we have anything like that out there now, or is just SLC in the understanding of code of conduct versus the majority of the students that are out there in the educational system within Rochester School District? I want to make sure that this information is being filtered correctly to the population, not just to a sector. So we have to understand that we want to reach the masses, not just a few. So if we're just reaching a few, then we're not doing our job. So that's what my concern is. Commissioner Santiago.
I just want to second ensuring that we do, really push and ensure that we're informing parents on the code of conduct, their rights, informing students on their rights, and the process on if they don't, if those rights aren't accomplished. I think a lot of parents go through things and they don't know kind of how to deal with it. And so I think that it's just important that we ensure, both parents and students, that we ensure that we're teaching them what their rights are, but also if their rights are infringed, how they can take process from that. And so I let you guys plan out on how that happens, but I think that that's a good thing, to have out there.
I mean, you make a valid point, Commissioner Santiago. I think the biggest thing here is to make sure that we are reaching the masses as much as we can, and not just a small sector, so that everybody has an understanding of the code of conduct, because it's very important. That part is very important.
Yeah, I think the deputy superintendent mentioned that it's at the school level, which means that the administration at the school level is going to ensure that all students are aware of it. So you have two different, and maybe more, two different angles coming at it. So you got student leadership, students talking to students, but you also have the principals and that staff also communicating to all of the students. So it's being covered.
I just want to hear again, because I'm still learning different things, but I do want to imply that, when we did have the breakfast, we only seen a group of students there, and I would like to have seen more than just the SLC students there. But that's what was there. So my concern again is that we make sure that we are reaching the masses. I cannot express that enough. I think that is very important, because if I went into the schools today and just out of whim as a liaison and spoke to some of the students, I questioned, if I did this, how many would know about the code of conduct, and how much do they know since it's been in place? So that's where we need to help and make sure
Yeah.
that is being done.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
and I think they did a great job with this pre-COVID in the schools, because it was a buzz, and people were talking about it. And so to the superintendent's point, we sort of fallen down on that since COVID, but that we're getting back to it. And so to your point, ensuring that, most of the students know you're not going to get 100%, but hopefully you can, that they will understand the code of conduct. And it's something that has to be talked about often, because it's a big document, and you're not going to learn it overnight, but they're working on, ensuring that, everybody is aware of it, so.
And just a suggestion, thank you, President Elliott, just a suggestion, maybe we should do like an assembly. I know back in the days I had assemblies. We do an assembly, in the beginning of the year, and we can, roll that out. And that is something that we can do to make sure that we're reaching, quote unquote, the masses. We have the information there for them. They can do like, when they come there, welcome them. This is the code of conduct. This is this. So at least we know it's there. We have done some due diligence in making sure we're reaching those masses. Yes.
I also wanted to make sure that you understand the thought that while yes, the SLC only is comprised of 45 students, that those 45 students do represent their schools, those students, and the district. It's yes, right, compared to like 23,000 students, it's a small number, but they do represent their schools, themselves, and those students. So whenever they say, so those two students who are at the chair and who represent the SLC and the students at the Code of Conduct committees, they're talking about what the students want, what the SLC wants. So to your point about bringing it to the masses, every year, or like every new student who comes into, like, for example, when I went to my high school, we got the school compact, like the Code of Committee, and like you got to sign off on it when you went to high school and stuff like that. So I do believe that exists every year when you enroll or a new school year comes out, like you get a compact and it's what it is. So I mean, yeah, but just to make sure that you understand that this SLC does represent. Yes, sure, 45 students might seem small, but we're talking about representation here, right? Just like you represent on the board for families and parents, they represent themselves and
Right.
their students. So
Good point.
Well received. Thank you for the conversation, discussion. I think that was a plethora of information for the community. Thank you, guys. We got to finish the motion. So I have a motion to accept the Code of Conduct 1400, mini Code of Conduct 1400-E1.
Motion.
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Charisma, for correcting me. So we did already receive the motion by President Elliott, and it was second by Commissioner Malloy. Then we went into the discussion. I do apologize for that. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Our second is the Navy Facilities Policy 7500. It's on the agenda this evening due to conversations that we come up with from multiple commissioners and the community. The goal tonight is to decide if the policy language needs updating. If there are any changes that are needed, either decided tonight, the policy will follow our current policy manual review process and be further reviewed at the June 4th Policy Committee meeting. Charisma, can you please walk us through the questions?
So the questions is currently posted, is hoping to help commissioners to decide on if there's any language that needs to be changed. So I'll read right through them and then, let us know if there's any changes that are needed. So the first question is, should the policy be updated to further define community members, such as specifying city or Rochester residents, et cetera? Should a policy be updated to make it explicit that submitted petitions do not automatically trigger the renaming process if the district believes renaming is not in its best interest at that point? Prior to the board's vote, the process is an administrative function. Should petitions be submitted to the superintendent for their administration to review and not directly to the board? Given the March 1st notification requirement to the state, should a policy include a deadline for petitions received, and any received after can be declined by the superintendent? Should language be added to the policy that includes recommendations from petitions and community forum does not obligate the superintendent to select those names submitted, or make explicit that the superintendent may decide not to make name change recommendations at all? Historically, the superintendent recommends one name to the board when naming or renaming a school or other facility. Should the policy be updated to reflect this? And then should the policy include a specific cooling off period, i.e. 1 school year or more, before the renaming process can begin again through petition for the facility that was just renamed?
Does any commissioners need to have further discussion on this? I think we probably do. But I would like to hear any input that someone may have.
So this came about as a result of the naming of the Franklin, and then after the vote was made, there were people who thought it should have been named after someone else. And so I thought this was a good time for us to review the policy to determine if there are some changes that needed to be made to the policy. I believe that the superintendent did in fact follow the policy. And he had talked about it for a few months, about the renaming of schools. And after the process had been followed, there was some concern about, the naming of the school. And so I thought that we should look at this policy to determine if there's anything in the policy that we could change or amend that would, and in this case, with this school, give people more, I don't know if it's that we need more time or that, people were just interested in it being named after certain person, and it was after the board had had approved the naming. So here's an opportunity, because they wanted it to be named after a certain person, but the process wasn't followed. They didn't come in the beginning as we were discussing this. And so is there something in terms of us being able to connect with the community with regard to this policy? And that's why I felt that we needed to have some discussion around, can we do something differently to ensure that the community is included?
Thank you, President Elliott. I also do agree. I'm going to say just a couple of things in reference to Franklin and the name change for Franklin in particular with the Padilla. I think the discrepancy is that there are two families with the Padilla name, and usually it's with the first name and their last name. And I think that it wasn't vetted correctly because that should have been caught because all names that are changed on schools usually have the first name and the last name. Secondly, what I'm finding here is that with the discrepancy with Franklin, there's a lot of jerseys, a lot of things would need to be changed, which would be very costly to the district, and we would lose a lot of money on uniforms that were just purchased, a lot of different other items that were purchased by Franklin staff, and now now all of that, all those that signage would have to be changed, which could be cost effective, and budget season with losing money. We just voted against the EPO for ease, and don't want to lose money. But here again, we're throwing away money if we make a name change to a Padilla instead of the Trent Jackson, because Trent Jackson it's already stapled there at Franklin. So by changing that name to Padilla, we would then have to go through and change a lot of signage within Franklin and also on uniforms and everything else. So that's something that we really need to consider if we go ahead and go through with the Padilla name and not put it on maybe like the Monroe High School we may have discussed. However, I do believe that we need to see if we can get more of community involvement in this so that something like this does not happen again. I don't know how and what steps we can take to make changes in here. I do think that we have specifically notated things on the policy, but here again, when we are making name changes, we have to look at the dynamics as a whole and how it will affect financially, because by changing this name and making it a Padilla name in general, we are going to be losing a lot of funding, a lot of money on sports gear that has already been paid for. So I just want to put that out there as well, because I think everybody needs to know the cost effect.
So I do want to bring just some clarity to that, right? I do think the naming policy and naming facility should be looked at. The policy should be looked at just from a lens of people are advocating for name changes on a more consistent basis, right? And so I think there needs to be some way of delineating and informing people that when we submit names to the state, that we have to submit them on March 1st every year, that's the name for the year. There's information that we could clarify in this policy that's important. Also to go forth and say, when it's asking for 100 signatures and then triggering the process, and then the process doesn't automatically mean that there's a name change, also could be received as misleading. So we start a process and then we don't change the name, that's also misleading. I do want to say that Franklin has been the Franklin campus for as long as I can remember, right? And it's had multiple schools within that campus that have played under the Franklin name. IIT High School, Vanguard. Before that, there was 4 schools. So the Franklin campus and the field there, all those things remain the same. The Franklin campus is the house to a new school that will be there next year. So I just want to put that the changing and the branding, Franklin Upper and Franklin Lower, are fairly new names to that school. They were just put in place pre-COVID, a year before COVID, when IIT and Vanguard were disintegrated as receivership schools. And prior to that, there were 4 other schools in that building as well. So I don't want the Franklin court, the Franklin uniforms, that stuff will not change.
Okay. Just to reiterate things here, I'm from the city of Rochester, and I want to let you know that the history of our schools has been changed dynamically. That the dynamics of our history of our schools, whether it be Madison, Jefferson, and a lot of others, have been changed, and that's our history. So I am very against removing more of our history from the city of Rochester, because we have done that too much. So I'm really passionate about that, and I'm going to voice that, because we have history that is being removed. Madison is now Wilson. Over down the street, we should have kept that lineage. We should have kept that history there. And we still have Madison reunions, but it's nothing like going back to your own school and seeing what history has been. We walk walk the halls and see. Well, man, remember that? Remember I was there. Remember we was down here when I went to Jefferson. A lot of Jefferson, they still have their history there, right? But when you walk into Madison, and if you go into Charlotte, all these different places that had history, we are removing the history of our lineage from our names for these schools. And I think it's important that we pay attention to what's happening here. So I'm not in agreement with the changes of these names like this and removing the historical aspect of what's underlying under that name that we have on these schools. We must pay attention to our history and where these names come from and why they are named the way they are.
I do want to say that once a school name has been closed through beds by the state, that name cannot be reused again.
I
Yep.
do
So-
understand
So
that.
that's why we're trying to be cognizant of campuses versus school name is really important. Because if, for some reason, a school doesn't perform and the state says you need to close, that school name closes and goes away, right? Or if it's not meeting metric. So that school name goes away, and then you have to reopen another school under a different name because you cannot use that existing name. That's why we're trying to be very cognizant when we look at names, also to make sure that we maintain campuses so that those names stay, so that they'll live on forever in history here.
I do respect what you're saying, but please understand the respect for what I have for the historical names that we have continued to change in the city of Rochester on the schools. We need to be cognizant of doing that, and we need to make sure that we're doing what we need to do in the areas as far as our history. I think it's important. Our history is being removed from our schools, and I think it's important that we pay attention to that. And we need to figure out why are the schools closing? Why are they still in receivership? We need to think about a whole lot of things because this happens every 2 years. So with that being said, we need to make sure that we're covering grounds here at ground zero at RCSD in this building to make sure that we can move forward and not have name changes and make sure our schools are saved and we don't have to worry about changing the names. So that's what the bottom line is. We don't have to change the names if we get our ducks in a row.
Oh, I just want to add on that a lot of the historic names that we're talking about were like racist slave owners, like Nathaniel Rochester, the school. He was a slave owner. Yes, he was the founder of Rochester, which is a great thing, right? But he was a slave owner. And like just to go on your point, like the Madison campus. My school's on the Madison campus, early college, right? Wilson Foundation's on and like it's engraved in the signage. It's the Madison campus. Yes, there's other schools there, but it's still labeled the Madison campus. Like it'll be like early college at the Madison campus. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Madison was completely demolished and rebuilt as a new Madison campus since like the 90s. So, but they still kept the signage of the Madison campus on there. So.
And I also think that Madison was a slave owner, right? So, I mean, so he was a slave owner. So, I mean, I understand the history and the community of Madison, but let's not forget, he was a slave owner, so.
I think we understand clearly what I'm saying. I think that as a whole, if we were to go out in the community, Madison name is the Madison name. I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying the history behind a lot of our schools has been removed.
Yep.
And I know you can relate to because we come from the same era. In some instance, we know a lot of the same people, President Elliott. And at the end of the day, that is a big concern. Yeah. So that's a big concern. So I just want to put that out.
And just a personal note here, when it wasn't you, Superintendent, but when a former superintendent closed number 14 school, I felt some kind of way, and I still feel some kind of way about school 14 closing. So I do understand the passion there.
And I do agree that maybe this should go back to the policy committee, right, for review to do, and I think there's some more discussion here.
Absolutely.
I do think there are some things, and I think we could outline them more clearly in a policy, and we're not going to be able to capture everything, but I do, some of the guidelines here, although policies are meant to create, some guidelines or provide misinformation to the community. I just want to make sure that's clear.
Yeah, I was just want to add on to that, Superintendent. I think there are some things that through the language of the policy, the district assumes as assumptions that are not being relayed clearly to the community. There is a potential for abuse in the policy, right? Somebody could trigger a petition once a month right? And every time they get an outcome they don't like, you trigger another petition. And I don't think that would be conducive. I don't think that's what the district wants. I don't think that's what the community wants. So I do think that this, some additional language should be put in to make it as, to give like clearer guidelines for all involved, and that would help, folks participate better in the process.
Thank you, Council. I have Commissioner Malloy. She has a question.
Yeah, no question, just a comment. I just want to say I agree with our general counsel and that I would support just better, or I can't talk tonight, I'm sorry. Yeah, I just like to further define community member, for instance, changing some of the language to make it more specific would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. That was a good discussion as well. We can move on. We will definitely be looking into this further, just to let the public know as far as the policy on the name changes. Hold on, President Ellie has a question as well.
I just have a question. Does that have to, is there any sort of action that needs to be taken to put that back to policy, Council?
We're gonna put that on the question log.
No. Well, he needs to tell us if we,
So if we're, all I'm saying is if I hear consensus, is there any sort of action that needs to be taken to bring this policy back to
Yeah,
the
so,
policy
so,
committee?
so I think I want to make sure that is a part of the agenda, but I think the board has expressed a will for it to go back to the policy committee for some changes. So I would just say advance a resolution, put forward a resolution, and the body could vote on it, and it could go back for some changes.
so I'll make that, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was also just gonna interrupt and just say that this was never up for motion to move forward anywhere. It was just to get some senses on if the policy needs to be reviewed and what exactly the board was looking for. And then it was gonna get sent through our normal review process. So it'll go to our advisory groups, then executive cabinet to come back to you all to review.
Okay.
So we don't need a motion.
Right, so again, the board as a body can always pass a motion to give specific instructions, but it's gonna happen anyway
Okay.
in this instance. So I think we're set so long as it works its way
Yep.
through the policy process.
Thank
All right,
you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Council. Okay, we're gonna move right along. The next on the agenda is a multiple policy presentation. Charisma, I'll turn that over to you again.
All right, so this is reviewing policy 0115, 1900, 2390, 2390E1, and then schools part 2, which is 4209 through 4215. And so all these policies follow the policy process. The policy chairperson, executive cabinet, the sped ed department, myself, and then BEC were the folks who contributed to the policy recommendations. Standard operating procedure, so the policies, I should say, were sent to our relevant advisory group for review, the district administration, and then as of right now, final recommendations are being forwarded to the policy committee to follow the policy management process as outlined in policy 2410. So for the first policy, student harassment and bullying prevention and intervention policy 0115, it was updated to reflect NESBA's recommendations that are applicable to the district. NESBA recommended that the policy, that their policy was updated to reflect the state's terminology for VADAR versus SSEC, and DASA reporting are combined under the term SSEC. 1900, parent and family engagement policy. NESBA did not have any recommendations, but the policy has significant changes. It was updated to reflect the district practices and reworded for sentences for clarity. Removed administration titles from policy as positions changes. Public board hearings 2390 and public board hearings procedure 2390E1. The policy and procedure were reorganized for better flow and speaker language, updated to align with the board bylaws 2300. There are no NESBA recommendations. And then for schools part 2, none of these policies had NESBA recommendations. However, Student Individualized Education Program, IEP, Development and Provision, Policy 4209, recommended the name change to include Individualized Education Services Programs, updated policy to reflect state law and regulation, implementation of individualized education programs, 4210, same thing, recommended the name change to include individualized education services programs and updated policy to reflect state law and regulation. Least restrictive environment, 4211, updated policy to reflect state regulation. Group similarity of needs, 4212, the declassification of students with disabilities and transition services, 4215. All three of those policies had no significant updates. Extended school year, July, August services or programs, policy 4213, updated to policy to reflect state law and regulation. Next steps, forwarded out of the policy committee to the board business meeting to follow the process outlined in policy 2410. And the goal is to the vote to happen at the June business meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Charisma. Can I get a motion to, for policies 0115, 1900, 2390, 2390-E1, and 4211 Thank you, and that motion's by President Elliott, and second by Commissioner Malloy. Any discussions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion will carry. Motion to forward student individualized education program, IEP, development and provisioning, 4209, out of the policy committee, including the name change to student individualized education program, IEP, or individualized education service program, IESP, development and provisioning. Motion by?
Motion.
Second.
I got a motion by Commissioner Santiago, second by Commissioner Malloy. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion to forward implementation of individualized education programs 4200 out of the policy committee, including the name change to implementation of individualized education programs and individualized education service programs? Motion?
Second.
I got a motion by President Elliott and second by Commissioner Patterson. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have some unfinished business, and now we're going to move to the unfinished business to discuss the board bylaws. I'm going to give it back to Charisma.
So for the first section, mentor for student representatives, section 3A. So the current language, so at the February policy meeting, the board had asked that this specific section be brought back to this to tonight's meeting. So the current language currently reads that the president shall appoint a board member mentor for the student representative. And so some options for you all to discuss tonight, if anyone have any additional, is either A, keeping the language, but including in accordance with Exhibit 2300E4, which further defines what that role would be, and that exhibit is attached to tonight's meeting. Or B, removing the language altogether so that, which would mean that the student rep would, the student rep wouldn't be appointed a board member as a mentor. So the goal tonight is just if you all can, come up with a decision on what would be preferred.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, President Elliott. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
that's okay. So I guess I want to hear from David. And I know that you had some concerns whether we should have that language in or not. Where are you with this now, David?
So my concerns kind of came from not exactly the resolution itself, because I took time to look at it and talk with my peers. My concerns are more with the language instead of the actual board, or actual policy rather, because I think the policy is great to allow a board member, or to formalize having a board member mentor the student rep. I think is great. Obviously, we kind of expect our student reps to be more socially inclined to, build those social interactions, but obviously not every student is like that. So I think especially like students who are just coming into this process, right? So I think that would be great. Just like the exact wording to make it sound more of, I'm not really sure, right? But change the wording to sound more of like an assistant, not assistant, but like a support rather than just being like,
A mentor?
exactly, right? Like instead of being like a mentor, like, hey, I'm mentoring you, more like, hey, I need support, I need someone to talk to about this, I need advice, kind of like that. I'm not sure how that wording would go, but that's what we're kind of looking towards.
So are you saying, just so I understand, David, are you saying to change the word mentor to support?
Yeah, change the mentor guidelines to be more like supporter guidelines, and change the actual wording of the exhibit rather.
Can you send me exactly what you're referring to so I understand
Yeah,
exactly what?
so I'm looking at the exhibit A for mentor guidelines for student representative, where it lists out what the guidelines are for mentoring the student rep.
Yeah, but I think that,
I think the
I guess,
language, the language beforehand was liaison, right? Are we switching? Okay. Because
yeah,
I think what he's explaining is kind of like just like a person of support. I think that
Yeah,
he's just looking for another term.
yeah, I don't know if I like the word support versus liaison or mentor. I think that's has a better title. I think, I don't know, that's my personal opinion. When you go to a resume and you look at support, you don't want to put support, you want to put liaison or mentor. So I think, I don't know, maybe I'm missing your point, and that's what I'm saying. Am I missing your point, David?
No, so I mean, the actual name being mentor, I don't really necessarily care about. I'm talking more about, because like if you go to the agenda where it says unfinished business and you look at A, it says 2300 E4, and that's the exhibit A for the mentor guidelines. The actual like wordage or the language of it, like what it describes as what the mentor is supposed to do for a student rep, like it says create a platform for a student rep to address questions and concerns and stuff like that. Do you see what I'm looking at?
So instead of the mentoring on that, we put support while supporting the student representative?
Right, just to change the language more so it sounds like you're supporting the student rather than like taking it over their initiative or anything like that. 'Cause I
Yeah.
don't want that to be the case.
Because you all don't like that, do you?
Right, no, we don't. Like, yeah, I would rather much have the student rep kind of come to you
Yeah,
guys when they need something, like, hey, I don't understand what this means, can you help me understand, versus like, you know what I mean? So, because I want
Right,
to keep that,
right. Yep,
I want to keep you
yep.
guys and us separate as much as possible.
Just for clarity, so I got the exhibit part, but you're saying that you're okay with the policy part saying mentor? No, so you want both of them to be changed to support?
That's what you're recommending, right?
So can we take them one at a time if you don't
Yes,
mind?
yeah.
So for the policy, are you okay with the wording? Or are you saying change that to support?
Change that.
I mean, I think mentor is fine. The actual policy name doesn't really concern me that much versus the actual wordage, because like the policy name can like, be whatever.
We got an opportunity to change it now,
Right,
if that's
of
what you
course.
want
I
to
mean-
do.
Consistency, that's why I was asking. Like, if
Yeah,
you want one change, I recommend doing it in
Right.
both ways.
Your explanation for it.
But I guess what Charisma is worried about is that we want consistency, we don't want to have it be
Yeah.
like mentor one place, and support, we want to make sure it's consistent across the board. So it's either going to be mentor, support, what are we going to do here?
I
So
think-
at the end of the day, the best thing would be what? Your recommendation?
I think saying a support liaison is probably the best way to go, just because like, you're supporting them, you're also kind of like in the works, and instead of a mentor, because a mentor sounds like you're much more personal, much more like, yeah.
You're training them or something. That's
exactly.
the impression I had from the word mentor.
Okay. So your recommendation is to say support liaison?
Yes, thank you.
I don't think that's
Support slash liaison.
liaison. Yeah, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I mean,
So in this language here, in the an exhibit where it says the designated board member is required to adhere to the following guidelines while supporting, and I don't know if the word liaison will go there very well, of the student representative,
Well, see,
right?
my thing is that when I look at the dynamics of it, what flows better, you know? So that's what I'm looking at. What flows better when somebody's looking at it or reading it. So when I like mentor, but you know he is the student, so I can't tell them how they feel. So I'm gonna stay in my lane and say, if you feel that that's something that the students would gravitate to, more of a support, then I'm not gonna argue with you about that because you're in that seat. I'm not.
How liaison, though, would fit into that, David? We just say support and replace support with, replace mentoring with support.
I think support is just a good start then.
Yeah.
Just saying support.
So supporting, while supporting the student representative.
Informal mentor, perhaps?
So Dave, if you wanna send me some verbiage of the way you think it should be,
yeah, I could
and then we can, because so we can move forward. Yeah,
Take this
and
back
then
to that
yeah,
session. I'll have all of them.
Yep.
Kind of, yep.
yep. I think that's no problem. Okay, thank you so much.
So just to be clear, this section is, nothing's gonna change right now. We're waiting for David. Okay.
We'll wait for David to send us the verbiage.
Okay. The next section, process for board, committee, parent, and student representatives, section 4D. So just as a reminder, so this is currently gonna talk about the parent rep process. So who can serve right now as a parent rep? Only parents and legal guardians of students currently attending the RCSD who are not employees of the Rochester City School District will be allowed to serve on the board's committees.
Is the red, what's in red, is that new then?
No, it just highlighted it.
Gotcha.
Or not. No. So how can someone apply? So a parent or legal guardian can apply by going on our district's website, and then put in, /BOE parent rep. What is the process after the application is submitted? The board office reviews the application to ensure the applicant is a parent or legal guardian and not employed by RCSD. The application is then reviewed by the committee chair. If moving forward, the committee chair and interested applicant will meet to discuss the role. The committee chair will make a final decision on the applicant. So now this is talking about the options for the selection of student reps for board committees. Before I go over this, I just want to highlight that I would greatly appreciate if you all tonight can make a decision on the how you would like to move forward with the student rep process, only because currently with the readings of the board bylaws, you all are slated to vote at this month's business meeting on that language that you had accepted, and so just allowing the board office to know how to move forward with recruiting student reps is why it's important if you all can make a decision on how you want to move forward with the process. And so before I even give the options, the first thing I want to talk about is the board looking to amend the student rep language to instead say student committee representative. And why that's being recommended is we currently, as you know, David is our student rep. And so not to confuse folks as to like, if we name the student who's the committee student rep, not to confuse the two. And so it's kind of distinguished like, okay, this is our student rep from SOC, the president, but then the student committee rep would be the person on the board committee. So that's the first thing I wanted to put out there. And then, and so as a recap of the February 6th policy committee meeting, these are the options that the board as a whole, including David was part of that conversation, had decided, came down to. So first, Student Leadership Congress, vetting applicants, then providing the Board of Education with final candidates. Second option was student representatives for board committees selected from current Student Leadership Congress members. And then the third option was using the current parent representative process that I just covered in the previous slide. Interested RCSD students can apply. An application will be processed through the Board of Education office directly. And so the commissioners at the February business meeting, when this was discussed, had requested SOC to provide more information on what they would like. And so David and the other SOC members, they recommended the following. So 8th to 12th grade students with an academic standing that is on track to graduate, should be students who are allowed to apply, and then they must join SOC before their tenure or during the school year. This would entail committing time to serving in the SOC to ensure that the student representative on the board committee is also committed to their role. So these were the options that were put out there. I don't know if commissioners have any other options, but like I said, the goal is hoping that commissioners could decide on, as a board, what the process is to move forward with.
Commissioner Malloy.
Thank you. I would support the Student Leadership Congress recommendation. I think that's pretty powerful coming from students, and so that is what I am in support of.
I just want to say that I like the Student Leadership Council, but what my only concern is, again, is that when you say, when you refer to the body of like the whole in the masses, we're not covering that. And we know that there is a gap there. So I would be in agreement more if we didn't have a gap in how many students are actually being represented by the SLC. And then you're saying go back to the student representative to ensure their roles. We don't know what these other kids have responsibilities of in their households, or if they're working. We don't know this. So I mean, you're almost like, if you don't do this, then you do that, and you're students. So I think that we're putting too much pressure is going to be applied by the SLC on a student to achieve something they may not be able to do because they have other obligations. So I think that part of that statement can be removed, and then it's acceptable. But if you're saying that they have to be a role in SLC, they may be involved in other student activities. So you can't browbeat somebody like that. I don't think that's fair.
If I may comment, so one of the biggest reasons why we had students who want to join a committee join the Student Leadership Congress is because of that exact problem. There's something called, that we coined a term, which is it's provided on the agenda, but we call it an experience disparity or opportunity disparity, right? So students who often have the chance to get an opportunity, right? Like let's say play sport, or let's say join something like the YVOV or SALT team, which is like the Student Athletic Leadership Team, right? If they have an opportunity to join that, oftentimes those students will join other opportunities similar to that, right? And that often creates a gap for students who don't have access to those opportunities or same time commitments for us. So we wanted students who are able to join a committee, right, who may not have anything other involvement, join that committee, and then eventually join the Student Leadership Congress so they get that support and they can have that as their full-time commitment. Because being a part of the district's committee and be able to have those changes is a full commitment that we want our students to have.
I understand what you're saying, but here again, I think we are not considering the whole and just a portion, and I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that, because you can't, if a student wants to join this organization versus SLC, but they still want to be part of be in the mentorship or what have you, I think that they should have that opportunity. We shouldn't be able to say you have to do this to do this, or if you're not a part of this, then you can't do this. I think we have to be careful there. I think that there's a fine line there.
Yeah, so we're not saying that they can't join anything else. We're saying that you must. So if you join a committee, right? For example, because it's open to every student. It's not saying, oh, you must have previous. No, it's open to every student as long as you're in good academic standing on track to graduate. So as long as you meet those qualifications, you're eligible to join, right? But obviously not every student is inclined to know about the exact policies or have the same knowledge as a board member might have, right? So that's why we say that, hey, you must join the SLC to get that knowledge and be able to serve your community further and to uplift your voice. It's not saying that the student can't join YVOV, which is the city's student leadership team. You can do whatever you want, but the reason why we're saying you must join SLC is because we want to make sure that they're fully honoring their commitment first as a committee, a committee member. But if a student, we have students in SLC, they do 8 commitments, right? Like Hazel Roberts, our vice president, she's committed 6 different things that she's able to come to our Student Leadership Congress's meeting. So our students are committed to multiple things, yet they're still able to commit time to what they want. So that's all it's saying. It's not saying that we're not really denying students who, who want to join something else. Like, I don't get that.
I appreciate what you're saying, Dave. I really do. I received that. Commissioner Santiago.
Okay, so the recommendation from SLC, it's open to all students. They apply, and then what's the process after that?
So after students apply, obviously this is like more terms of like the actual application process and whatever that deems is, acceptable, but there will be like a grace period where students will have to apply through to the SLC, right, join. And while they're in SLC, they obviously get the support they need to commit to their role as a committee member, but also as a role as an SLC member.
Okay, and I just want to ask you this question just so we can establish. So the student representatives, and this is more just about SLC, the body alone. The student representatives are elected, correct?
Yeah, well, the student representative and vice president are elected.
Okay, but I'm saying to be part of SLC, are they elected?
Nope.
Okay, and so any student can
Yes.
run,
Yes.
or any student can apply for SLC.
Yes.
And so what does SLC do? Yes.
Just want to limit our questions here. We're doing. You said one question. Okay, I just want to.
Yeah, I
limit
just
it.
have one more. Then I'm done.
Okay, so I don't want to limit. I don't want to keep rambling on with questions.
Well, I just want to make sure that that the information is out there. There's been a lot of
No, I
misinformation
understand,
shot.
but I just want to
There's
be
been a lot of
considerate of
misinformation
everybody.
shot inside of the comments and the long 5-minute comments that's been told, which is also a waste of time. And so I want to make sure that the right information is going out
That is
there.
not what I'm saying. I just want to make
So,
sure that you said a couple
and
of questions. I
so-
just want to make sure we
and
stay
so-
decent and in order.
So they apply and they're automatically on SLC.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a 45-minute, student capacity, but virtually any student, as long as they're on track to graduate, and obviously, because academic setting is different for every student, but as long as you're on track to graduate, right, and anyone's can join.
Okay, thank you.
Santiago, and thank you, David. Commissioner Malloy.
Thanks. I'm just trying to understand the process a little bit more, and I think some of the concerns I think that I'm hearing is that a concern might be that the same students are in those positions of power over and over again, and maybe they have more influence over others. I don't personally feel that way, but can you address that, perhaps? Maybe assuage some of the concerns that community might have about that.
Use myself as an example, right? So when I first came into high school, right, I joined student government, right, and through that, my sophomore year, I joined SLC, right? I've already had like a lot of other stuff I've joined, right? But because I had that knowledge from most people, like, hey, you should join this instead. So I joined it, right? And there's no a committed time allotted to those students. Like no programs like, oh, if you can't commit to this, you're out, right? Same with sports, right? We just rather, the reason why we're asking students, or not asking, but requiring students to join the SLCs because we want to make sure that those students who may not have, or who are overcommitted to things, right? They really take the time to commit to this one thing, and they take this time to really flesh out that one role. Whether it's on their work as a committee member or whether it's through the SLC, that they really take a time, because we also want to grow leaders and retain them, right? I won't say we don't want, because it's great that we have students involved in so many things. I don't want that to be misconstrued, but we want students who may not have a voice to be able to get that voice and to really grow it, right? The amount of students I have seen since like 9th grade year to now who were able to really stick with the SLC and to see them grow as leaders, who may not, and like they're not the student who's like necessarily athletic or might want to join something else. They see this opportunity as anyone can join and anyone's voice can be heard, and they really flesh it out because we offer them great support and great mentoring, things like that.
So in your opinion, would you say it's a diverse group, a good snippet of our population?
So, so the funny thing is that I think that our group is probably more diverse than any classroom in the whole city, because we have students with IEPs, we have students with disabilities, we have students who don't speak English, right, but who still come and are able to represent in their own way. We have students who are from all different types of backgrounds, and I'm not just talking about like racial diversity. I'm talking about like personality, right? They have different political opinions, but yet they're able to come to this organization, but this team, this family, able to represent themselves and the people around them, and they do it beautifully. So
Okay,
I
thank you.
don't see them. I don't think it's like this one like monolithic hive mind, right? So
Thank you so much.
thank you.
I'll just say
Okay,
that,
and
I was just gonna just say in relation to what the diversity.
President Elliott, would you like to speak?
I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me. I appreciate that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for correcting me. I just wanted to say, just that, the thing they have in common is that the intelligence that's in the room. So that's the thing. That's not diverse. All of them are incredibly, smart. It's in that program. Thank you. And I do apologize again.
Oh, you're fine. Thank you. You're welcome. Okay, is there any more questions?
So I just for clarity, because it sounds like most commissioners are okay with SOC's recommendation, but it is not a consensus on their full recommendation, so I just want clarity on how to move forward.
Not in an agreement with the verbiage.
Can I say something?
Absolutely, Commissioner Patterson, I didn't see your hand. I apologize. Go ahead.
I think it warrants more discussion between us as board members, where we go from here
My
with the
support-
decision.
My support, I know that, part of the issue here is that there's also a demand for us to get this passed in this meeting, or to have something and pass.
Commissioner Santiago, you have to wait until, Commissioner Patterson, are you done? Because I want to do things decent and in order. Are you finished, Commissioner Patterson?
Yeah, I'm done. I lost my thought, but yeah, go ahead. I'll come back if I have to.
Please, let's try to stay
Well, my apologies.
respectful.
I was
No,
actually called on to speak
No,
before
you-
and had my hand up before
Co-
Commissioner
co-
Patterson, but it doesn't matter. I apologize. I didn't mean to.
Santiago, hold on one second.
cut you
Everybody's
off.
we're doing good. We just want to make sure we're not overstepping anybody and making sure we're decent and in order. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, I
Okay,
had
go
my hand
ahead.
up for a while now, before Patterson, but I do apologize to Commissioner Patterson if I did cut you off. That was not on purpose. My support is towards the SLC and their recommendation.
In all due respect, I'm not in direct support of SLC. I'm in support of some of what SLC is doing, but I think that it doesn't address the whole. So I'm with Commissioner Patterson in saying that we as the board need to address this to make sure that we are governing all the students in the city of Rochester. And I think that is very important for me as a representative on this board and a representative of the students as a whole. I don't feel that we should just be addressing or just keeping it with 45 members. And from where I'm from, I think we're missing some students if we do that. I understand what you're saying, David. Hold on one second. We have anybody else? Okay, Commissioner Patterson. Is that Commissioner Patterson?
Yes, I
Okay,
had
go
my
ahead.
hand up. Again, I don't think in a democratic society that we should cut anyone off if they want to be a part of something, if they don't want to be a part of something, but they still want their voice to be heard, or they want to know some more about policy. That's why we get into mentoring, that if an individual, a student, wants us to mentor him or them, or provide them with information on policy or clarify information on policy, you shouldn't have to be a part of, SLC to, have that information relayed to you. So, like I said, we're more of a democratic society, and you should not have to be a part of something and the narrative be driven from that group, because an individual might have their own independent thoughts and independent voice, like the body of seven does, on this, on our board.
Yes, go ahead.
you.
I'm sorry, David. Go ahead. It's your turn.
So I'm getting a little angry right now. I feel like I lost a couple of brain cells, to be honest, just because of the fact that publicly, and I'm gonna say this on public record, I was told not to be defensive, but I have to get a little defensive when it comes to my students, because on public record, Commissioner Griffin and Commissioner Patterson, you guys have not come to one single SLC meeting, and it's open to the public, so anyone can come. You guys have not come to one single, you have not. Please don't cut me off, you have not. So the thing is that,
In all due respect,
Please, don't cut me off.
David,
I get
in all
my
due
time. Don't cut
respect,
me off.
You don't. That is not acceptable because if you don't know, I've been to one, but at the end of the day,
Have not.
don't do that. Okay, don't do that, please. Don't do that.
Excuse me.
It's not proper to name us like this in public like that. It's not proper.
General Counsel.
Commissioners, can I make a recommendation? There are currently 5 commissioners. From the conversation I've heard 3 in favor and 2 against. So I think if the board, to bring this conversation to a close, you would need a majority of the board that doesn't appear to exist at this time. So I would say to just kind of bookmark this conversation. Unfortunately, Charisma, I think this one will have to be carried over
Thank you.
to another time because I don't see a majority. The board doesn't have a majority to make a decision tonight.
Can I just finish my comment
Thank
real
you.
quick?
Thank you very much,
I
Council.
want, can I address the quorum issue, please? David, the commissioner is correct that someone does have to be recognized to speak, and that goes for everyone, right? The chair gets to recognize people to speak. Commissioner, once you have recognized someone to speak, the board's own bylaws say they get 5 minutes to speak. I would just again remind that ad hominem, again, kind of personal, address the issue, not the person, right? And so please don't address the person, address the issue, because otherwise it's just gonna spiral. Thank you very much.
But if I may add, like I was saying, the issues that you're speaking of are coming from a standpoint. You're speaking about how our students can represent, but you have not seen them represent to their capacity. So our students, whether you like it or not, 45 students do represent the students of the city school district, whether you like that or not, right?
You please start saying whether I like it or not.
Okay.
You shouldn't do that.
Well, okay. Just let me speak. Just let me speak.
I think he meant to generally whether an individual likes it or not, or a person likes it or not.
Please be quiet, Commissioner Santiago. Please be quiet. Please be quiet, Commissioner Santiago. Point of order, please.
All right. So when I took this back, right, this back to the students, right, the students had a strong inclination because of all the stuff that we just listed. This is what the students want forward going, right? The reason why is because when a student wants to join a committee, and just to go on a previous board member's comment, this is open to all students. It's not saying that this X and Y, no, it's not saying that only SLC members can apply. It's saying every student can apply. However, we do require that the students eventually or do join the SLC because we want to uplift their voice and make sure that they're valued and heard and be able to commit time to their role as an SLC member, but also as a role as a committee member. Because it's hard, whether we acknowledge it or not, to be able to be up here or talk with board members, or whether it's a difficult process, right, for parents, for everyone. So we want to make sure that the students have that support and that they're acknowledged beyond the committee meeting, right? Because if a student wants to have their voice heard on a committee meeting, it tells us as educators, hey, we should forward this. We should make sure that their voice is uplifted and heard more. And that's what we're doing with this process. So I just don't see the disagreement here because these students do represent, the RCSD. They do it eloquently. I don't want to list names of the students and what they do, but they do. They come from backgrounds who aren't represented. They come from low-income backgrounds. They come from, not having a second parent in the household or no parents in the household. We have students who are homeless who come and represent themselves in their community. So I just don't see the disconnect here because these students do represent RCSD and they represent themselves beautifully. And that'll be my last comment tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. Okay, we're gonna, as the council said, we're gonna table that, Charisma, and we're gonna move forward with the other. We're gonna move on to C. Can we? Okay, go ahead.
Is there something else we need to vote on right now?
Yeah, we have just a couple of things and we're done.
I need to go to the bathroom. So is it now?
I didn't realize it was on. Right after this.
Okay.
Right, so the last part of this conversation with 2300 is, so the current language under the student rep section, section 5 of the board bylaws, says that participation by the student representative shall mean the right to address issues before the board, the right to cast an advisory vote immediately prior to the formal vote on those issues, and the right to propose motions during committee meetings and work sessions. And so the question for the board is to discuss if you all wanted to change the language to say board meetings to include business meetings, because right now this section only includes committee meetings and work sessions. So the question is, would does the board desire to also allow the student rep to have that advisory vote also, like at all board meetings, that would include business meetings as well.
So, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Council.
I actually would recommend to the board that this not be advanced. I think the language was intentional, and I think it was a bit of a intentional limitation. Both under Robert's rules and law, you're talking about, under Robert's rules, the members get to propose motions. And I think your elected officials, so having non-elected officials propose motions at the business meeting would potentially cause complications at the very least. So I think the language, while well-intended, I believe the original language was intentional to limit that to circumstances such as like a work session or to when we weren't dealing with committees of the whole, right? To really give the student representative kind of learning opportunities as opposed to motions at the boards like business meetings or.
Commissioner Malloy, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with keeping the current policy language for that reason. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Malloy, what did you say?
I'm supporting the current policy language.
Oh, okay.
As
I'm sorry.
recommended
Okay.
by our general counsel.
All right. Anyone else have any questions on that? Oh, okay. Right. Yeah, so I just wanted, I'm sorry, just we had to cross some things out because some things can't be done today because it's been tabled. So thank you, Charisma, and thank you, Council. Can I get a motion to accept the revised policy under Section 4, Committees of Board of Education bullet as aligned by the bylaws 2300 policy from student representatives to student committee representatives? Motion?
I'm sorry, what are we voting on? I'm not quite clear.
Right here on the committee, right here, the committee meetings and the work session, that's what we're voting on. Do you see it?
So this was the language that distinguished the student rep from the student committee rep
Right.
to the board. Right now, based on what the board had passed through the readings, it says parent and student representative, but the recommendation is for it to say parent rep and student committee representative, so that way it's not confused with our actual student rep from SOC.
Okay.
Does everyone see that? Do you see it? Is everyone in agreement? Can I get a motion? Can I get a second?
So there's no second, so what happens, General Counsel?
If the board is expressing a wish not to vote on the resolution, then it doesn't advance. There's no vote. Again, is it just a matter of clarification? I mean,
Yeah, it's just
which resolution
verbiage.
exactly
Yeah.
is being? Can you just
It's the
reiterate?
student representative, student committee representative. It's just changed into student representative to student committee representatives. That's it.
Can I?
Go ahead, Charisma.
So just to clarify, so right now, when we see the word student rep, we automatically think of David, for example, who's our student rep, who comes out of the Student Leadership Congress, who's the president of that group. So what I'm saying now is that currently the language that's being passed through the readings in section, I believe it's 3C, I want to say, where it talks about the parent rep, the board had forwarded out the language that says parent and student rep for the committees. So these are two different things, is our committee meetings that we're talking about. And so the board had asked that moving forward, once you all vote on the policy later on this month, that we would have one parent rep and one student rep. The problem is that the name student rep is the same as the name student rep from SOC, i.e. David. So to clarify the difference, the recommendation is to say student committee rep, so that it's clear that that specific position is for the board committees versus the student rep of SOC, the president. Does that help?
Griffin?
Yes.
So we're talking about students who will may serve on our audit committee or on our ESA committee. Those are the students that we're talking about that is distinguished from those students who participate in Student Leadership Congress. Okay. So that's what we're voting on, to make that distinction, to clarify that.
Yeah, it's just verbiage. So are we getting a motion?
I've still put the
So
motion out
President
there.
Elliott motion, we don't have a
Motion.
second.
So we don't have a second, right? If it's, that's fine. It's not, it's just the wording. So that's fine.
Just to make for
It,
clarification.
yeah.
I just need to see the actual tracked changes somewhere, and I don't know where to look. So I'm seeing the highlighted stuff down at the bottom, but that's not what we're
That's
talking
this
about.
one right here. This is
So
that one.
if you could just, there we go. It's putting- What page is that on? So that I,
Y'all better hurry up.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So this version doesn't track change the word committee in it, but this is the section that I'm referring to. So right now, what you see, this is page 6. Page 6, sorry, so this is 4D. I'm sorry, I was off. It's not 3C, it's 4D. So on the section 4D, right now, it says parent representatives and student representatives serving in an advisory capacity to committees may be appointed in alignment with Exhibit 2300E3. So the recommendation is for it to say parent representatives and student committee representatives serving in an advisory capacity so committees may be appointed in alignment with Exhibit 23E3. So again, that would distinguish the difference between the student who's serving at a committee in this section versus your section 5, which right now covers the student rep that comes from SOC.
and we don't currently have student representation on our individual committees. Okay. I would like to ask our student rep how you feel about this language. Student voice is important.
So I think the word change is great because it distincts like well, who's the student rep, which is me, versus who the student committee reps are, because it's two different positions. So I think saying parent representatives and student committee representatives offers that clear distinction because that policy wouldn't refer to me, right? So it should definitely refer to those students who are student committee representatives.
And do those students come from the Student Congress?
Yes.
And are they assigned and voted on by Student Congress?
So, like I said, the initial application process is open to every student, right? So the committee members are already select, like if they do the application process for the, student, like the committee, right? Let's say for the, I don't know, give me a committee name, whatever, right? Let's say they get into it, they're already inside, like they don't have to get elected from us or anything. They're already, but we do request that they join the SOC in collaboration, so that way we can, uplift their voice and whatever.
So you're cool with this language? Yes. Okay, thank you. I will second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. And we have a second motion by Commissioner Malloy. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in favor, all opposed, say nay. Motion, thank you. Motion carries.
I only heard two
did-
votes.
So if it does or not,
What?
Commissioner,
Aye.
Well, but there's still 4 commissioners. Was there a vote amongst the 4? And it was all ayes?
Yes.
Then it passes.
Okay. Okay, and then we have, can I get a motion to accept the revised policy language under Section 5, Student Representative Bullet C, as outlined in the Board Bylaws 2300 policy from committee meetings and work sessions to board meetings. All in motion? That's the one we just went over.
Oh, is it? Well, I thought the one that we just
Right
went
here in
over.
front of you, right here on
Hold
this
up,
one.
hold up.
I'm sorry.
I thought the one that, are we talking about E now?
Right, what happened, that's when I was just, was trying to say to Charisma, the one that we're looking at now is the one that is E. The one before that Malloy couldn't find, Commissioner Malloy couldn't find, that's why that's why it was the delay.
That was B, right?
Right, so the one that we're looking at now on the slide is the one with the committee meetings and work sessions, current policy language, and the proposed policy language. That's why Commissioner, in her defense, Commissioner Malloy got confused because she was, it's not her fault, but it was not up in front of her. She wasn't looking at the one that was for the right one, for the student representative, in her defense.
So my question has to do with if we are going to have student reps on the board committees, should we be removing the language committee meetings?
So this specific section is specific to the student rep, the actual SOC president itself.
Oh,
Not the,
okay,
not
okay,
the
okay,
committee
gotcha,
meeting.
gotcha.
That's
All right,
why it was
thank you.
important to try to distinguish the two.
Got, yep, understood.
It was my understanding, I'm sorry, can I talk? Okay, I did not ask permission, I'm sorry. I thought that that's what we were getting advised on by our general counsel just a few minutes ago, was the slide that we're looking at right now. So I think it was my understanding that there was board consensus that we weren't going to change the language, that we were going to leave as is.
That is my recommendation. Again, I think this language, and actually, I for historical context, I connected with a prior board member just to make sure my interpretation of this thing was in line with the historical context. I think this language harkens back to a time when you were talking about not committees of the whole. And I don't think either under Robert's rules or under the law you want to have non-board members proposing resolutions. So to President Elliott's point, you may be correct if you're going to have a representative on every board meeting, so long as it continues to be committee of the whole, you might have to look at a limitation to this, a further limitation to this language also.
Okay. So is this something we should be advancing now, or is it necessary?
I think this should go back for
Okay, sir.
for revision.
Okay. Thank you, counsel. So this will go back. This is, yep, E is going back. So, okay, we have, F, can I get a motion to forward Board Bylaws 2300 out of the Policy Committee to the April 25th, 2024 business meeting to continue in its third reading in accordance with Policy Management 2410?
So moved.
Can I have a second motion?
So does that mean that is that sending it back to committee though?
The last one,
No,
yes.
or
So
that's
right,
advancing it?
right. So that the change. I mean, Charisma. Please interrupt me if I'm incorrect. Anything that wasn't approved by the board, there wasn't consensus to occur, will not show up in the third reading. Anything that the board has indicated, such as this board meeting versus committee meeting, different language will be proposed at that time for.
So do we need a second?
That's a clarifying question, sorry, Counsel. Could you tell me why we would not be, just from that sense, putting the policy back to readings? Is that because it would have to start the whole process over again versus just amending the current language?
Right. So we're just taking the piece. We're taking it piece by piece, and anything that there's consensus on that is confirmed and passed along for the next reading. There come the final reading, the board can amend it there as well, right? If the board so chooses, but there will be different language for the things that the board has indicated given a directive that there should be different language for by that third meeting.
And I guess to clarify my question, the repercussions of not forwarding it that way and going back to committee, would that have to start the whole process over again?
Not necessarily. I mean, the board could put it back
Accelerate
on
readings?
an expedited, direct that it be kind of expedited out of the committee. But that would be a board decision. And I know the board support has a very specific process that I don't want to throw a wrench in the gear. So Charisma, do you have a preference for
we
either?
just have 4 members here, right, that are kind of, right at this time, that are kind of controlling that process. I just wanted to make sure that we're leaving the option for revisions if needed at the next reading.
So you need 5 members to amend the bylaws. So if there are not 5 members voting on the final version, it's not gonna materialize. So board bylaws amendment requires supermajority of the board. So again, come the final reading, you do need 5 board members to approve, all the changes at that point that the board has kind of indicated approval of as this process has kind of gone on.
Okay, yes, we have Charisma, she wants to speak.
I just want to clarify, as of right now, the only changes being forwarded, right now, the board bylaws finished the second reading last month at the business meeting. So in addition to those amendments, you all just voted on 5B that allows the change in from student rep to student committee rep. So that's the only additional change that will be added to the third reading as of right now, unless between now and a week before the business meeting, if commissioner has additional recommendations. But as of right now, that's the only change that's being set forward to go back into that third reading.
Thank you, Charisma. We also, President Elliott, you? She motioned, okay, and
Second.
who did the second?
There's no second.
Okay, did someone second that? For the, okay, that's the one we just did with the committee meetings. That's the one we have to take, no, I'm sorry. We're looking at the, policy management. You were just explaining about the committee meetings that we sent back, correct? So now we're on to F, which was the policy management. He was just explaining what happened on E,
So
correct?
I think that
He was explaining what committee meetings were, so that's what we went back to after I was reading the policy management 2410.
I'm sorry, my question was around, we're motioning right now for this to go to the third reading, and I was asking if, are we bringing third readings forward with revisions and the opportunity for revisions? So the
Okay, I'm
motion
sorry.
right
Yeah.
now is for the third, to
For
move
fifth,
forward
okay,
to
for the
advance
F.
for the third reading.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That
We
was
was
the
going
last
back
motion
and
I
forth,
saw.
so I do apologize. So we are on F, and this is the motion for the third reading in accordance to policy management 2410. We did get a motion by Commissioner Elliott. Is there a second motion on this? No second motion?
Okay, so can I make a recommendation? Oh, I'm sorry.
Are you seconding the motion for the third reading on policy management 2410?
Yes, if no one there present is seconding it, then I will. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? So we have a second by Patterson, Commissioner Patterson. Any discussion?
So my question is, if we vote yes right now, then we're moving it to a third reading at the business meeting.
Right,
And we'd still have the opportunity to make revisions there if needed.
absolutely.
If we vote no on it, what are we essentially saying, General Counsel?
I think it goes back to the subcommittee for further work before it gets brought back to the board again for the third reading on a time that the board so chose that third reading would occur. So essentially, a postponement to a date certain, potentially before that third reading could occur. That's what I think would happen.
Okay.
Commissioner Elliott?
So let me just, for clarification, why are, and reminding me, why are we doing it this way as opposed to just taking the entire policy and voting on the entire policy once and for all? So why are we doing it this way, if you could remind me?
Because, Commissioner, these are the board bylaws. There were many provisions that were proposed that a number of board members, there was no consensus,
Okay.
right, on the broad sweeping changes. And so I think the approach that has been taken, which I believe is the right approach, is to take it piece by piece, get consensus on those things that the commissioners have expressed again, agreement on, and advance those elements. Once we get to the end of that process, anything that there is no consensus on just does not happen. And the bylaws as is, as to those specific sections, would remain as is.
All right, thank you.
Sorry,
Commissioner Malloy?
last clarifying question. So are you recommending that we advance it to the third reading? With the understanding that we can change the elements that we don't like? That's what I'm
Right.
looking for.
Right,
Thank you.
Absolutely. If the members are prepared for discussion, and the members will assuming that board members will have read all the proposed changes and be prepared to discuss it and propose amendments right there on the floor. And so absolutely, I would just advance it to the third reading, and any issues that the board has indicated issues with in this meeting, we can circulate some language around, and then by the time of that third meeting, then the board can, make those changes.
Commissioner Patterson? Thank you, counsel.
Yes, and Adrian, I could be wrong, but I thought initially you said that we should send it back to committee. So just for clarification purposes, let me know, your final answer.
Nope, Commissioner, I said the board had either option. The board has either option. Sending it back to committee would potentially postpone it for a longer or indefinite period of time before it would be potentially brought back to the board. Advancing it to the next meeting, there would be, give it a specific timeline for when the final reading of the policy would occur. So it's really more timeline. Sending it back to the committee potentially has a possibility of restarting the process. But again, the board could also order that it be expedited out of committee to a meeting, which the board has done from time to time. My recommendation for this is the board has spent a lot of time already on agreeing on pieces of the policy. So to advance it to the final reading, and at that point, again, you will require a supermajority of the board to make the changes. And if that agreement is not there, then it just doesn't happen. But at least the process took place, and the process wasn't delayed unnecessarily.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to go on to all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say nay. Okay, motion carries. We're going to go on to consideration of resolutions. Now we're moving to the consideration of resolutions on the agenda. The 2023-2024 board meeting calendar is being recommended to be amended to move the board meetings for the week of June 24 up a week due to the district's graduation schedule in order to allow commissioners and administration to attend. Can I get a motion to amend 2023-24 board meeting calendar?
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion by President Elliott and second by Commissioner
It's a
Malloy.
Reverse.
Motion.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's reverse that. I apologize. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And then we have a motion to go into executive session.
B, 7. was it? Oh, okay.
We do the board meeting survey first?
I'm sorry, did you say something, Commissioner?
The board meeting survey, do we need to complete that?
Oh, yes,
prior?
please, yeah, I'm so,
Oh,
yeah. So we
Executive
just-
session.
Well,
executive-
yes, I
yeah.
just want a motion to go into executive session.
Most, so moved.
Thank you.
do we have to state the
Second.
purpose of executive session?
Yeah, that's down at the bottom there.
To dis- Do you have that, Commissioner? The purpose of the executive session?
You have to say why we're
I
going
don't.
into executive session.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm so sorry, yes. I'm sorry, guys. We're going to the executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment of specific individuals or to discuss matters of concern with the general counsel. A motion, we have a motion by President Elliott. We have a
Second.
second by Commissioner Malloy.
All those in- all those-
All in
All in
favor?
favor? I'm sorry, guys. All in
Aye.
favor? Aye.
It's all good.
So we'll be back shortly. Welcome back. This is Commissioner Griffin, and we are back to go over the final resolution of this evening. Returning back from our executive session, and I want to get a motion for the consideration, resolution number, 2023 to 2024, the resolution number 720, sorry. Second. We do have a motion by, Commissioner Malloy and, President, Elliott. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposing? Okay, motion carries. Please don't forget to do the board survey if you not have already done that. Can I have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Okay, we have a motion to adjourn by Commissioner Malloy and Commissioner Santiago. Any discussions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. This concludes the policy committee meeting. Thank you all. Have a great night.